Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we take that comprehensive stack of sources you've provided, all the articles, interviews, the research, and we really just lock ourselves down to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight.
Exactly. Our goal is simple, really. It's to give you the shortcut to being truly well-informed on a subject.
And that means all the surprising facts, all the crucial context you absolutely need.
Our mission today, well, it centers on a voice that has achieved a level of global recognition it's almost unprecedented in the last half-century. We are exploring the career of Andrea Bocelli. This is a figure of just staggering commercial success. I mean, we're talking over 90 million records sold worldwide.
90 million.
He's redefined the boundaries of classical music, and yet at the very same time, he exists right at the center of this massive tension in the music industry.
That tension is the whole reason we're doing this deep dive. It's the central question.
Right.
How can one man who's lauded by people like Celine Dion as having a voice like God
An incredible quote.
be at the same time subjected to some of the most consistent and frankly, sharpest critiques from the classical music establishment? He's commercially invincible, but he's also critically vulnerable.
Exactly. And our task today is to move beyond that simple dichotomy and really understand why. Why is this balancing act even possible? We'll trace his journey, which is just improbable, from a blind law student in Tuscany all the way to a global superstar.
We'll look at the machinery of that crossover success.
And then we'll land squarely on the technical debate, the big debate surrounding his voice.
It's the ultimate paradox, really. All built into a single career. We have to figure out how he manages to operate and even thrive in those two vastly different worlds. Okay, let's unpack this. The mission is to uncover the key nuggets of knowledge that explain this remarkable dichotomy.
So to truly appreciate the scale of Bocelli's fame, I think we have to anchor ourselves in his early life. You can't understand the man without it.
Right, back to the beginning.
He was born in 1958 in Lajatico, which is a small village in Tuscany. His family farm was this hub of activity, and it combined two very different enterprises, selling farm machinery and making wine.
That's a very grounded upbringing, isn't it? Rural, industrious. It's a sharp contrast to the global jet set life he would end up leading.
Absolutely. And the challenge, a huge one, was there right from the start. He was born with sight impairment because of congenital glaucoma.
But the sources, they detail this one heartbreaking moment that really cemented his future path.
They do. At age 12, he suffered a blunt force trauma. He was hit in the eye with a football, and that led to the complete loss of his vision.
Wow.
And that trauma, it really underscores the desperation of the situation. The sources specifically note this desperate attempt to save his remaining sight, and they go so far as saying doctors resorted to leeches.
Wait, leeches? In the early 1970s?
That's right. It's a profoundly visceral detail, isn't it? It just illustrates the medical extent his family went to. It reminds you, this wasn't that long ago, but medicine was different.
That detail alone, it just underscores the desperation and the immediate life-altering nature of that accident. It must have shifted his focus completely.
It did. But thankfully, he already had this deep, innate passion for music.
So it was already there.
It was. His mother recognized that music was the primary source of comfort for him. He started formal piano lessons when he was 6, but his real brilliance, lay in his ability to teach himself a vast range of other instruments.
Whoa, I didn't realize that. What did he play?
Flute, saxophone, trumpet, trombone, guitar, and drums. This multi-instrumentalist background, even if it was self-taught, it just speaks volumes about his ear and his rigorous, self-imposed discipline.
It's just hard to reconcile that level of innate musicality and that discipline with the path he chose next. You wouldn't think the trajectory to global superstar tenor begins in a law library, but for him, it did.
It's quite the opposite of what you expect. After finishing secondary school in 1980, he didn't immediately jump into a conservatory. He pursued a rigorous law degree at the University of Pisa. And this is a critical point of contrast, I think. You have this disciplined academic path built on logic and precision, running parallel to the chaotic, expressive, and often spontaneous world of performance.
And the music wasn't just a hobby during this time, it was his livelihood.
Exactly.
Right.
To earn money to pay for law school, he worked evenings performing in piano bars.
And that is where he met his first wife, Enrica Cenzati, back in 1987. I can't imagine that schedule, studying complex legal statutes by day, performing emotional music by night. It must have been completely exhausting.
It was a serious grind. And it wasn't just a passing flirtation with law, either. He completed law school and then worked for 1 full year as a court-appointed lawyer.
A full year.
A full year. So if we're looking for those nuggets of knowledge here, you can really connect that background in law to his later musical career. The legal world, it demands precision in communication, meticulous preparation.
Right, and performance under pressure.
Immense pressure in a very public setting.
That structured, demanding foundation probably equipped him with the mental rigor he'd need later on, right? To take on the monumental task of learning complete operatic roles, which that requires serious commitment and memory.
Precisely. It explains the sheer commitment required to then manage a career transition of this magnitude. And that transition, well, it arrived dramatically in 1992.
This is the pivotal moment, the one involving the Italian rock star Zucchero.
That's the one. Zucchero was auditioning tenors for a demo tape of his song Misery, and his intention was to give it to Luciano Pavarotti.
He wanted Pavarotti to sing it.
He did. Zucchero recorded Bocelli's take, which he then shared with Pavarotti. And Pavarotti's reaction upon hearing Bocelli's voice, well, it was the ultimate game changer.
What did he say?
He urged Zucchero to use Bocelli instead.
Yeah.
He famously asked, "Why are you calling me? Use Bocelli." Pavarotti eventually did agree to record the song with Bocelli, and the two voices blended just perfectly. It became a huge hit across Europe.
Wow, that is the highest possible endorsement for an aspiring tenor. I mean, it's just...
Doesn't get any bigger.
It immediately conferred a measure of classical legitimacy on him and put him on the radar of every major label. And after that, Bocelli toured with Zucchero in 1993, which was effectively his apprenticeship on the big stage.
It really was. He performed Misery, and he also sang solo sets, including the notoriously difficult opera aria Nessun Dorma.
Singing Nessun Dorma on a rock tour. That is a clear statement of intent, isn't it? It signals his operatic ambition right from the very beginning.
Absolutely. And that momentum, it all culminated in the 1994 Sanremo Music Festival, which is, arguably the most critical cultural gatekeeper in all of Italian popular music.
And he won the newcomers section, right?
Mm.
Performing Il mare calmo della sera.
With a record score. That victory was massive. It led almost immediately to his debut album of the same name, hitting the Italian top 10 and being certified platinum within just a few weeks.
A few weeks.
So you see this dual trajectory established almost immediately. While the popular music career was launching, he also made his formal opera debut in September of 1994. He took on the role of Macduff in Verdi's Macbeth in Pisa.
And Macduff is a dramatic tenor role. That is not for the faint of heart. It confirms that his ambitions were deeply rooted in classical repertoire.
Exactly. And one final important personal detail that provides some context for the massive sacred repertoire he would later record.
What's that?
The sources mention his return to the practice of the Catholic faith around 1994. And this was partly inspired by him immersing himself in the intense, spiritually grounded works of the Russian author Leo Tolstoy.
Interesting. So that spiritual grounding helps explain why, almost immediately, he performed Adeste Fidelis for Pope John Paul II in Rome that Christmas.
It sets the stage perfectly for the wave of inspirational and sacred music that would come to define his international crossover profile.
So moving from that Italian launchpad into the mid-90s, the speed at which Bocelli achieved global superstardom is genuinely head-spinning.
It's incredible. He returned to Sanremo in 1995 with Conte Partirò, and even though it wasn't a contest winner that year, it became the single that shattered international boundaries.
So how did that happen?
The breakthrough success of this song is a masterclass in combining, I think, serendipity with really targeted marketing. The initial single was, moderately successful.
Okay.
But everything changed because of the English soprano Sarah Brightman. The source materials say that she heard him singing Conte Partirò while she was just dining in a restaurant.
Wait.
She recognized its immense potential and immediately suggested they do a duet.
And that encounter gave birth to the iconic duet, Time to Say Goodbye. They changed the lyrics from the original Italian.
And the placement of the song was just pure marketing genius. It was chosen as the farewell anthem for the hugely popular German boxer, Henry Maske, at his retirement match in 1996.
I remember that. The emotional power of that performance just resonated so deeply with everyone.
It did. The single debuted at the top of the German charts, stayed there for 14 weeks, and went on to sell nearly 3 million copies.
3 million. And to put that into perspective for you, the listener, our sources note that Time to Say Goodbye became the best-selling single of all time in Belgium. It eclipsed the previous record holder by over 1 million copies.
1 million copies.
That isn't just a classical success. That is pure, unprecedented pop chart domination globally.
And that success was immediately replicable across borders because they had this smart, multilingual marketing strategy.
Right.
Following his massive compilation album, Romanza, in 1997, his record labels commissioned multiple versions of the song Vivo per Lei. So you see versions recorded in Spanish with Marta Sanchez
In Portuguese with Sandy.
and in French with Hélène Ségara.
And that French version with Hélène Ségara became a massive hit in France and Belgium. So that proves Bocelli wasn't just leveraging the power of one song. He was a recognizable voice whose appeal just translated seamlessly across cultures and languages.
And this global footprint was the necessary groundwork for cracking the very challenging U.S. market.
Okay, so how did he break into America?
His American debut came in 1997 through a PBS concert special called A Night in Tuscany. And, PBS specials are absolutely crucial for crossover artists like him.
Right, they offer these wide, culturally engaged audiences a chance to experience the performance without the filter of, say, pop radio.
Exactly. And that exposure led to a landmark year in 1998, which saw him transition from just an international phenomenon to a full-blown American celebrity.
He made his official U.S. concert debut at the prestigious John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C.
And was immediately honored with a reception at the White House with then-President Bill Clinton. I mean, that is instant high-level cultural acceptance.
He simultaneously achieved pop culture bona fides, too. He was named one of People magazine's 50 Most Beautiful People in 1998.
Which demonstrates that he was successfully straddling that line between serious musical artistry and mainstream Hollywood celebrity.
His award momentum then focused heavily on film music with the song The Prayer.
Right, the duet with Celine Dion, a massive voice in the U.S. market for the animated film Quest for Camelot. And that song was a huge critical success. It won the Golden Globe for Best Original Song.
And this led to a performance at the 1999 Academy Awards ceremony and an Oscar nomination. The exposure was just monumental.
It all culminated in Bocelli himself receiving a major but very rare nomination for a classical singer, Best New Artist at the Grammy Awards in 1999.
And even though he lost to Lauryn Hill, just being nominated in that category signifies an extraordinary level of mainstream acceptance.
It really does. A classical tenor who sings primarily in Italian and Latin was recognized as one of the year's most significant new acts in the American popular music sphere.
Yet the final defining moment of this period came squarely in the classical realm, which I think demonstrates the sheer volume of his sales, regardless of what the critics were saying.
Absolutely. His 1999 album Sacred Arias. It achieved the record for the biggest-selling classical album by a solo artist in history.
That one data point so powerfully illustrates his crossover market reach. And our sources cite a truly phenomenal Guinness Book of World Records entry for him.
I love this one. Bocelli simultaneously held the top 3 positions on the U.S. classical albums charts with Sacred Arias, Aria, the opera album, and Viaggio Italiano.
Think about the implication of that for you, the listener. One artist had completely cornered the market.
This wasn't a flash in the pan. This confirmed his status as a commercial powerhouse within the classical category itself, not just as a visitor from the pop world. He effectively raised the ceiling on what classical music could sell.
So, as the 21st century dawned, Bocelli made a really clear statement. He wasn't content to be just a opera star defined by one hit duet.
No, he doubled down on his commitment to traditional, demanding opera. It suggests he genuinely wanted to be judged by the highest classical standards.
And this commitment is evident in the sheer volume and, frankly, the complexity of the complete opera recordings he released, starting around the year 2000.
These are colossal undertakings. You have La Bohème in 2000, followed by a Verdi album that same year, Tosca in 2003, Il Trovatore in 2004, and then Carmen in 2008.
And these are not lightweight choices either. Tosca is a cornerstone of the repertoire. And Don José in Bizet's Carmen, which she performed live at the Teatro dell'Opera di Roma in 2008, that's one of the most dramatically and vocally demanding roles for a tenor.
It requires both lyrical beauty and just raw dramatic power.
Exactly.
And he wasn't just limited to studio recordings, he undertook full stage roles. In 2001, he portrayed the main character in Mascagni's opera L'Amico Fritz in Verona.
And performing live on stage without amplification, that demands a physical presence and a technical projection far beyond what's needed for a studio album or an arena concert.
It's a different world. And during this time, he also garnered major institutional recognition, which confirmed his global cultural standing. He won the Classical Brit Award for Outstanding Contribution to Music in 2002.
And then later, in 2006, he was honored as a Grand Officer of the Order of Merit of the Italian Republic. These are serious acknowledgments from his home country and the global classical industry.
But this is where the core tension of our deep dive really comes to the fore.
Right.
You have a singer committing to the most demanding art form, selling those recordings in unprecedented numbers, and yet the critical reception of his operatic roles was severely mixed.
It's a crucial area for critical thinking. The sales figures for his Tosca and Il Trovatore albums were huge, maybe bringing these works to millions of new listeners.
Absolutely.
But the critics, listening to the vocal execution, they cited fundamental technical flaws when measured against traditional operatic standards.
Exactly. And we have to highlight a nuanced detail here, cited by Andreas Dorschel in a critique of his Tosca recording. The review noted a monochrome timbre and little dynamic variability in his delivery.
So for the non-opera listener, what does monochrome timbre actually mean?
It means it's a fatal flaw in a dramatic role. A great tenor playing the tormented painter Cavaradossi in Tosca needs to show a massive range of emotion, from delicate love to defiant rage, and he has to do that using vocal color and volume.
So if the voice is monochrome, it means the performance sounds, stoically indifferent, like the critique suggested,
Yeah.
regardless of whether the character is facing torture or execution.
Precisely. This disconnect between the required drama and the perceived delivery is what drives the expert critics crazy.
And yet, commercially, he's just unstoppable.
Which suggests a very real divide. The average listener, who's likely consuming the performance through a recording or in an arena with sound enhancement, is moved by the inherent beauty of the tone.
While the classical expert is measuring the capacity for sustained, unamplified dramatic delivery over an orchestra. Two different metrics.
Completely different. And beyond this critical fray, he also utilized his global platform for public service, which cemented his status as a powerful, empathetic figure. In 2000, he performed a concert at the Statue of Liberty for the PBS special American Dream.
I remember that performance. It featured an incredibly poignant moment. He dedicated the encore, the song Sogno, which means dream, to his father, Andrea Bocelli, who had just recently passed away.
That's right. He had immediately returned home for the funeral after fulfilling a prior commitment to sing for Pope John Paul II on May 1st. These moments, they connect the man to the music in a deeply human way.
And then, most memorably, in 2001, he provided a crucial moment of cultural comfort. He performed Schubert's Ave Maria at Ground Zero in New York City during a memorial concert for the victims of the September 11 attacks.
That performance just transcended entertainment. It established him as a global voice of spiritual consolation.
It really did.
And finally, we arrive at the creation of his most personal and enduring legacy project from this era, the Teatro del Silenzio, the Theater of Silence.
In his tiny hometown of La Jatica.
That's right. In 2006, he convinced the local municipality to build this utterly unique outdoor venue.
And it is, by design, an anti-venue, isn't it?
It is. It's structured to host performances usually for only one night every July, and then it stays silent and empty for the rest of the year. Bocelli serves as its honorary president.
It's a testament to his dedication to his roots, but it's also a massive undertaking in terms of global logistics.
The guest list reflects its international gravitas. I mean, you have names like Plácido Domingo, Jose Carreras, Sarah Brightman, Lang Lang. It's an acknowledgement of his place among the global artistic elite, bringing them all back to his small, silent corner of Tuscany.
As we move into the next phase of his career, starting around 2009, Bocelli focused heavily on commercial reliability and strategically reaching new audiences.
Yes, through very high-profile contemporary collaborations, while at the same time increasingly integrating his family into his artistic life.
Let's start with 2009. His album My Christmas, produced by David Foster, became a foundational commercial success.
It really did. It was the best-selling holiday album of the year, and it solidified his voice as a reliable, essential element of the annual festive season in the U.S. market. And that's a position that generates consistent sales year after year.
And the recognition for his long-term impact on the live entertainment industry just kept accumulating. In 2010, he received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for his contribution to live theater,
which acknowledges the massive scope of his global arena tours and special event concerts.
That same year, he demonstrated his continued relevance on the global political stage. He performed the demanding aria Nessun Dorma at the opening ceremony of the Expo 2010 in Shanghai.
He consistently occupies these massive symbolic stages. It's part of his brand.
But perhaps the most defining public performance of this era was the massive free concert in 2011 on the Great Lawn of Central Park in New York City. That was an incredible logistical feat.
It absolutely was. He was accompanied by the New York Philharmonic and the conductor Alan Gilbert. This was the ultimate merging of high art institutions with massive popular access.
It was later released as the album and DVD concerto, One Night in Central Park.
Which just reinforces his model, right? Use the credibility of classical forces to deliver an accessible, widely broadcast spectacle.
His strategic collaborations are particularly interesting. They showcase his willingness to adapt to the contemporary pop landscape. Our sources cite his 2017 collaboration with Ed Sheeran.
Perfect Symphony, an Italian lyric duet version of Sheeran's massive pop hit, Perfect.
That collaboration is pure genius from a market perspective.
It is. It instantly brings his voice to millions of younger listeners who might never intentionally seek out a classical tenor. It makes him cross-generational and relevant in the streaming era.
Alongside these professional evolutions, his personal life brought new partnerships. He met his current wife and manager, Veronica Berti, in 2002, and they married in 2014.
And their daughter, Virginia, was born in 2012.
And this family foundation has now been fully integrated into his career, creating a legacy that resonates emotionally with his audience.
It really has. His 2018 album, C, was a monumental commercial success. It debuted at #1 on both the UK Albums Chart and the US Billboard 200. That was his first ever #1 album in both countries.
And that album's success was fueled in part by the duet Fall On Me with his son, Matteo.
It's a wonderful example of using that family connection to deepen the emotional resonance of the music. And the song's placement in the film, The Nutcracker and the Four Realms, only broadened its reach.
This family collaboration deepened even further in 2022 with the album A Family Christmas.
It's remarkable to see his daughter, Virginia, who was just 10 years old at the time, performing with him at major events like the UK Festival of Remembrance. It's showcasing the next generation of Bocelli talent.
And we absolutely have to discuss the Music for Hope Easter Sunday concert in 2020. This was a moment of profound cultural importance during the peak of the national COVID-19 lockdowns in Italy.
A huge moment. He performed from an empty Milan cathedral, accompanied only by the organist. The emotion of that performance, singing to a silent world in a silent, massive structure, was just immense.
And it was streamed live on YouTube. It drew an immediate audience of 5 million people and logged over 32 million views afterward.
That moment underscores something critical. At a time of global anxiety, when technical purity was totally irrelevant, Bocelli's voice was the one chosen by millions for comfort.
That overwhelming public response highlights his role as a voice of unity and hope. It proves that emotional connection sometimes is the most valuable commodity.
And that brings us right up to the present. 2024 marked his celebration of 30 years in music with the Andrea Bocelli 30, the celebration concerts back at the Teatro del Silenzio.
The guest list for these anniversary concerts just perfectly encapsulates the eclectic, genre-defying nature of his appeal. The sources list classical legends like Jose Carreras and Placido Domingo,
Alongside pop titans like Ed Sheeran, Shania Twain, Jon Batiste, and Eros Ramazzotti.
and perhaps most surprisingly, the list didn't stop at musicians.
No, it also featured non-musical Hollywood guests like Russell Crowe, Johnny Depp, and Will Smith.
This just confirms that Bocelli is now operating at a level where he sits comfortably at the intersection of classical music, global pop culture, and Hollywood celebrity. He's using his voice to bridge all three worlds. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. We have established the extraordinary commercial success, the genre-defying career, the massive public service platform. Now we have to dive into the core paradox, the intense polarization surrounding the actual mechanics of his voice and his technique.
We're shifting our lens now from the market to the critique. And to understand the controversy, we first have to acknowledge the staggering chorus of praise he has received from some of the most prominent figures in music and popular culture. This reflects his tremendous emotional impact.
And that praise is almost theological in its intensity, isn't it? It reflects the aesthetic impact he has on listeners. I mean, going back to the beginning, even before he was famous.
Right.
Franco Corelli, the legendary Italian spinto tenor, heard Bocelli in a masterclass in 1986. And Corelli praised the raw quality of his voice and gave him private lessons.
That is a seal of approval from a great master of the traditional, weighty operatic art form. You can't buy that.
You can't. And then came the celebrity endorsements that just cemented his status globally. They provided these powerful sound bites that defined his brand.
Celine Dion. She famously introduced him during her Christmas special, stating that if God had a singing voice, it would sound a lot like Andrea Bocelli.
And David Foster, the producer who was so instrumental in his U.S. success, repeatedly described Bocelli's voice as the most beautiful in the world.
Oprah Winfrey confessed on her show, "When I hear Andrea sing, I burst into tears." That highlights the raw, emotional transport he achieves.
And the actress Elizabeth Taylor, who was a passionate fan since the mid-90s, she was quoted after a concert saying, "God has kissed this man, and I thank God for it."
So these accolades, they reflect a profound, instantaneous, and deeply moving aesthetic impact. It's an emotional magnetism that clearly transcends any technical analysis for the average listener.
And this, fundamentally, is the foundation of his commercial invincibility. He connects so powerfully on an emotional level.
That chorus of praise is deafening. But our sources show that where the celebrity spotlight burns brightened, the critic's lamp must also be raised, and sometimes brutally.
So now we have to turn to the other side of the coin. The unflinching, almost surgical criticism he has routinely received from classical music critics, particularly when they're discussing his performance of full operatic roles.
And we have to be impartial guides here and just synthesize the core arguments. These critiques consistently focus on the technical requirements for unsupported, unamplified operatic singing in a large hall.
A skill set that is entirely different from pop singing or even amplified classical concert singing.
A completely different animal. In an opera house, your voice must physically carry over a full orchestra for 3 hours.
Let's start with Anthony Tomasini, the chief music critic for the New York Times. A voice with significant weight in the American classical sphere. Reviewing Bocelli's North American opera debut as Werther in 1999, Tomasini noted that the basic color of his voice was warm and pleasant, but he listed several major technical flaws that directly impede operatic performance.
And what were those key points of criticism?
They centered on a lack of the necessary technique to adequately support and project his sound. Tomasini specifically noted that his sustained notes would wobble, his soft high notes were painfully weak, and that inadequate breath control often forced him to clip off notes prematurely at the end of phrases.
Okay, so let's break that down. Why are clipped phrases and wobbling such a technical disaster in opera?
Well, a great operatic line, the legato, it needs to flow seamlessly, often over many bars, and that demands enormous and consistent breath support.
So if the notes wobble or the phrase is clipped because you run out of breath?
It destroys the musical line, it breaks the dramatic tension, and critically, it means the sound is not fully projected into the auditorium. And when he reiterated this criticism for the La Boheme album, Tomasini noted Bocelli still has trouble with basic things like breath support.
Bernard Holland, another highly influential critic at the New York Times, was even blunter in his assessment. He described Bocelli's tone as rasping, thin, and in general, poorly supported.
Holland offered the infamous critique that even the most modest upward movement in pitch thinned his voice, signaling what appears to be the onset of strangulation.
Wow. That vividly targets the perceived constriction in his upper register. And that is an absolute death knell for a tenor attempting to hit those high, ringing notes required in the repertoire he chose.
Holland ultimately concluded, quite bluntly, that Mr. Bocelli is not a very good singer. He criticized the phrasing as tending toward carelessness and rhythmic jumble, and observed that his voice and his performances are spectator-friendly and critic-proof in a sea of approval.
And Andrew Clements of The Guardian echoed this disappointment regarding the studio opera recordings. He cited Bocelli's unvaryingly coarse tone, wayward intonation, and never a phrase properly shaped.
Which suggests that even in a controlled studio environment, where technical flaws can be mitigated by close-miking the voice, the fundamental control was still deemed inadequate by the experts.
And this criticism followed him into his more recent work, specifically his 2008 Carmen recording. Joe Bano of The Washington Post noted that while Bocelli possesses an essentially lovely tenor for a pop ballad, his voice was puny, despite close miking inflating the sound for the recording. Bano cited his singing as short-breathed, clumsily phrased, interpretively blank, and often pinched and strained.
So this raises a key analytical question. If his technical flaws are so glaring to the experts, why do major recording houses continue to cast him in these big operatic roles?
And the answer is simple and brutal. Marketability. He may be technically vulnerable, but he is commercially invaluable.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We have an artist who's commercially invincible, who has won multiple World Music Awards, Echo Awards, a Hollywood star, Grand Officer of the Italian Republic, the Billboard Latin Music Lifetime Achievement Award.
All while being accused by major critics of technical inadequacy for the very art form he attempts to perform most seriously.
It means Bocelli occupies a truly unique position. He is the essential figure in defining operatic pop, or the crossover genre, on a global scale.
He's responsible for injecting classical music, particularly with his Sacred Arias album, into the international pop consciousness to a degree that we have never seen before.
And his popularity proves that millions of listeners, including some of the most influential people in the world, are moved and transported by his unique tonal quality and the sheer emotional power of his performance.
Despite the acknowledged technical issues when his sound is stripped of amplification and measured against the rigorous standards of the opera house.
The tension here is a perfect microcosm of modern art and knowledge consumption. It's the technical purity demanded by experts versus the raw emotional connection and market resonance achieved by a performer who operates successfully outside those expert constraints.
He sells the experience, and the experience moves millions.
So to quickly wrap up our deep dive into the tenor of two worlds, we have seen the extraordinary journey of Andrea Bocelli, from a blind student and a working lawyer in Tuscany who taught himself music,
To a worldwide pop star almost overnight thanks to that key endorsement from Pavarotti.
We've traced his staggering commercial dominance, noted by the 90 million records sold, and achieving a massive global footprint across pop and classical charts.
Confirmed by that Guinness record of holding the top 3 spots on the U.S. classical albums chart simultaneously. Just incredible.
But just as importantly, we've laid bare the critical firestorm that follows him, where figures like Celine Dion describe his voice as divine, while top critics cite unsupported and wobbling, sustained notes and clumsily phrased operatic attempts.
It's the market success versus the technical reality.
Exactly. His legacy isn't just one of success, it's one of definition. He didn't just participate in the crossover genre, he essentially defined its scale and global reach.
And in doing so, he forced a necessary confrontation between objective technical standards and mass emotional appeal, which is recognized by his vast array of global awards.
And this brings us to our final provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over. Bocelli's career highlights a fundamental tension in modern music, and perhaps in all consumption of art.
The question is this. When a performance can transport millions, leading to tears and profound aesthetic claims, as testified by Dion and Taylor, despite recognized technical flaws cited by the New York Times critics, does the resulting aesthetic impact automatically outweigh technical purity?
In a world where amplification allows performers to prioritize emotional connection over the centuries-old requirement of unamplified projection, is the ultimate measure of a singer based solely on the rigorous, objective standards of the opera house.
Or the sheer magnitude of their ability to connect emotionally and move a global, multi-generational audience? We encourage you to listen, weigh the arguments, and decide for yourself which world holds the ultimate metric for knowledge and art.